Thank you everyone for taking the time out of your beautiful afternoon to join us for the Southern Oregon Business Seminar Series. This is number 3 of 6. And today we're going to be talking about digital communication. Um, we found this to be a topic that really was necessary, and we're excited to bring it to you today. Sowerty has been fortunate enough to help administer grants throughout the COVID pandemic, starting early last year in 2020, clear through current. As Kim mentioned, we have some current grants going on for Jackson County, and watch out for some upcoming news for Josephine County if there's any businesses from there. But through the experience of administering these grants, we have found that there has been some struggles with some of our small businesses and larger businesses with how to navigate through the grant process, digital communication, just how to make sure that your documents are all in place, how to save and have the right format to save and upload. And we are very excited to have with us today Kayla from the Josephine Community Library District, who is going to share some tips and best practices to really help our small businesses and help all of you here today prepare yourselves for these upcoming grant opportunities that we have, and for other reasons that you may have for digital communication. It's kind of the world that we're living in right now. Everything's virtual, everything's going digital, and it's really a shift that we've had to make. And there's a lot of things out there that have changed. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kayla, who's going to walk us through, some of the best practices and tips that we have. So Kayla, thank you for joining us today. It's all yours.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks everyone for attending today's session on digital communication. Let me just get to where I can share my screen. Okay, let's jump right in by talking about email. When you are doing email, the first thing you want to consider is which provider you want to work with. ProtonMail and Gmail both have free accounts with several upgrade options and are both widely recognized. Now, the main difference is that Gmail has a 2-step verification process when you sign into your account on a different device. ProtonMail does not. So you want to consider that if you know that you frequently or even occasionally switch between different devices like your phone and a computer or a tablet or your friend's computer. And if you find it difficult to verify your identity by using an additional email account or your cell phone. And a landline doesn't work, it has to be a cell phone. So if low tech is your thing, I recommend going with ProtonMail. Now, once you've chosen a provider, you set up your business email account to your advantage. Use your business name in your email handle. Only send business emails with this account. Use your personal email account for personal messages. The same goes for social media accounts. Business communication is really challenging, and it's challenging enough without cluttering it up with personal correspondences. Now, under most circumstances, 1 or 2 email addresses per company is sufficient. Any more than that, and it just makes it confusing for your customers to figure out how best to contact you, or even vendors how best to contact you if you're doing business partnership. And it gives you another email account that you just have to check regularly. One account is fine if your company is very small, or if you only need one person to handle the emails. Now, 2, like in my example here, that's acceptable if your company has a couple employees who have very different job descriptions and need to interact with customers and other contacts in different ways, such as an employee who takes orders and an employee who handles hiring, payroll, and other HR matters. And if anybody has a question, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself, turn your camera on. I welcome questions during the presentation as well as at the end. Now, the last important part of your business email account is your signature. Again, you can do this to your company's advantage. Business signatures may have varying information depending on your type of business, but always include your full name, your title if you have one, your business's name, and its contact information. Include your business's physical address and or its website, especially if you do a lot of online interaction with your customers or vendors. And then include your signature in every email. You can do that by going into the settings in your email account and then adding and saving your signature there, or rather creating your signature there. This gives people an easy thing to reference when they need your contact information, and it also identifies you as a legitimate part of the business. If you have an extension and you want to give that out to people, that's also a good thing to include at the end of your number if you find it's useful to give people your direct line. Okay, once you've set your email up, use it as a tool to communicate and build respect for your business. You've got two purposes there. Subject lines are your friend. They serve two primary functions. One is to capture the attention of the person receiving the email, and two is to keep messages organized and easily identifiable within an inbox and or your email folders. State the purpose of your email in the subject line. Try to be as concise and straightforward as possible. A good limit is 6 to 7 words or 30 to 40 characters. Punctuation is not usually necessary in subject lines, just a quick, detailed description. In your emails, always use professional language, which helps establish your business as something to be respected. This can be more formal or casual depending on your business type, but thank you for something specific is always a really good way to start or end. Try to address the person you are contacting by name instead of dear sir or dear madam or to whom it may concern. This will make that person feel like you are giving them your full attention, which will help garner respect for you and help you build a rapport with them. And it will also help you to keep track of who you're contacting for what, just like the subject line does. More details is helpful for organizing. Use complete sentences like you would in a longhand letter that you're sending through the mail. No abbreviations, no emojis, no acronyms. Those are more appropriate for texting. And again, you want to establish your business as respectable and thoughtful. Another good rule of thumb is to avoid overusing exclamation points. Okay, if you have already got an email and you need to reply to it, do it promptly. Do it before your emails build up and get buried and forgotten. It's for your own sanity, but it's also a courtesy to extend to other people that helps build trust with the people you're communicating with. And hopefully it will also prompt other business people to treat you with the same courtesy, right? Can't hurt. When you're responding to an email you received, it is usually best to just reply directly to it and leave the original subject line. Starting a new email just clutters the inboxes, and leaving the original subject line will make it instantly obvious to the recipient that the email is in response to the one that they already sent. You reply by clicking on the little curved arrow that's usually at the top of the message. If more than one person is included in the original email and everyone needs to keep track of the thread as messages are traded back and forth, you would reply all. Or if you need to include someone who hasn't been included yet, you use the forward option to send the email along to them. Okay, frequently business emails need to do more than just communicate. They often are used to get files from one person or business to another. This is called adding an attachment to an email, and the button for it is usually a paperclip, like you would use a real paperclip to attach a printed resume to a printed cover letter. Now, when you click the paperclip and you're working from a computer, here's my little paperclip, it will allow you to attach a file from any location on your computer, like your documents or your pictures or your downloads, or from any device that's plugged into your computer, such as a thumb drive or your phone. You just have to choose the browse this PC option or something similar. You can also usually attach files you've saved in your cloud if you like to use that for your file storage. And if you're working from a phone and you're sending an email from that, you still look for the paperclip. You can also pull up a photo or other file on your phone and use the share function, the little box with the arrow, and then mail to start the email process from the photo or file itself. So this is the different ways to do it on an iPhone and an Android. They look fairly similar. iPhone has the box with the arrow. Android share function is the kind of looks like a constellation, I guess. Okay. Now, business communication often calls for the reverse, not just giving a file to someone, but actually downloading and saving an attachment someone else has emailed to you. The most common business file formats you will send and receive are XLS, which is a spreadsheet, Doc, which is a text document like from Word, and PDF, which is a protected high resolution image that you can edit if you have the right software. It stands for Protected Document Format. Use the download button, which is a down pointing arrow, to download an attachment, or you can also choose the save as. They function the same, download and save as. Now, the file you downloaded will predictably land in your downloads folder, and that's not a good place to store it. Downloads folders are not set up for long-term file storage. You want to make your own set of files just like you would for a physical filing cabinet. So once you've downloaded your file, you can move it from there to your documents folder, a picture folder, or somewhere else on your computer's hard drive. And sometimes you need to print a document from an email. The print button is usually near the download button, or it might say quick print, and it looks like a little tiny printer. After you click it, a print window should come up, and then you just need to make sure you choose a real printer that you know exists, because sometimes you'll have old drivers on there for printers that you had to toss a couple of years ago, and who remembers to delete their printer drivers, right? Okay. Let's talk about creating a PDF, protected document format file. There are several phone apps that can do this, which is very helpful if a lender or someone else is asking specifically for you to send them something in PDF. On iPhones, you use the Notes app to create a PDF, and iPhones just come preloaded with the Notes app. You open a new note, you click the plus function, and then select Scan Documents. Then you really carefully take a careful scan of the document, making sure that the camera is close enough and squared to the document and as flat as possible. When you click the camera button, the phone will capture an image and format it as a PDF. Then you have to save the image, and it's helpful to add a title so you can easily find the PDF in your notes later. I could not figure it out when I first did it. I was not doing that last step of saving it. And so sure enough, it disappeared every time I tried to take this PDF. So make sure you save it and give it a nice, useful title for you to locate later. And then from that saved file, you can use the share button again, the little box with the arrow, to email or text the PDF to someone. If you're using an Android phone and you have a Google account, you can create a PDF using Google Drive. You use the plus function and then scan, again, making sure you are squaring your camera as best as possible to the document and making your camera flat. Your phone might also have a print function in your photo options, and from there, it might be able to save as PDF. Now, PDF, I should say that PDF is different from a JPEG. JPEG is a more common image file type, but it's not as high resolution as PDF. And that's why sometimes with business communication, they ask specifically for a PDF and maybe not a JPEG, maybe of like of your driver's license or something like that. Okay, and then the last thing we want to go over today is digital signatures. There are a lot of apps available for this. Here are some common names you might see when the form to be signed is sent to you. eSignly, PandaDoc. I've done a lot with DocuSign lately. It was very user-friendly, pretty user-friendly. Adobe Sign, HelloSign, eSignLite. There are lots of them, and they're probably only going to keep being more. When you get an electronic document to sign, you will open the form and look for something like this little yellow square that says sign on a line that says signature. You tap the square with your finger and a second window will pop up and it'll look like this. It'll have options to type, upload, or draw your signature or initials, depending on whether the form is asking for your signature or just your initials. And some documents need both in different places. You can draw your signature or your initials and click create, or some apps will say adopt and sign, and you just e-signed your document. And then sometimes you have to click through and click next, and that will take you 3 pages down to where the next signing line is. And then you'll just click that little yellow sign button, and it will automatically input the signature you just created. So it gets to be really fast. Let's see. And you usually just use the type signature function for lines that only need your printed name, just like you would print your name in addition to signing a form in person. Wow, we got through this really quickly, so I hope you all have questions. If you do want additional lessons in business communication and you have a Josephine Community Library card, you can use that card to open a free account with Udemy, which is an online learning platform with tons of classes on a lot of topics, including digital communication. And if you need to do things print or in person, you need to do any scanning, printing, or faxing, here is a list of local vendors who offer those services. Old Town Mail House is right downtown here by the library. Staples, of course, is over in the Walmart Fred Meyer area. Central Signing Service is a few blocks north of like the Ambassador Auditorium on 6th. And then if you're out in the Illinois Valley, Big Footprint and Copy also offers all of those functions. Okay, and you are always welcome to suggest a class that you would like the library to teach by calling us or emailing us at info@josephinelibrary.org. Does anybody have any questions?
We're going to open this up in just a minute. And Amy, go ahead and chime in. This has been a really useful class. And I know a lot of these seem like basic things, but they're huge. We deal with these every day. So Amy, go ahead and pop on if you can hear us.
Sorry, I am on. Yes. Thank you so much, Kayla. We do appreciate your presentation. And these are very useful skills. We have found that a lot of grant businesses were ineligible or disqualified just for simple not being able to upload a PDF or get it into the right spot. So this is very useful information. We do want to thank the Josephine County Community Library District. And part of why we partnered with them today is because they offer all of these services to you as businesses free of charge, free internet access, the computer usage. So all of this stuff is free to you guys. And as Kayla mentioned, there's a lot of different organizations that offer this stuff free. So if you need help as a small business owner, please reach out and, use those services and resources that are out there for you. We have this grant opportunity that is available right now. It is open until Thursday. So please check the link in your chat. We would love to get some money out to those businesses that are in need. Any questions do we have there for Kayla? Kim is ready to facilitate our Q&A. Any specifics for her?
One question that I get a lot is, hey, you sent me some documents, or I need to get you some documents. What is the easiest way to do that? Kayla, what is your solution?
Mine is usually email. I can also text documents to people depending on how fancy my phone is, but I prefer to do email attachments because I find it easier to organize an email inbox on a computer than I do to organize anything on my tiny little phone. And also the files I have are usually stored on my computer. But if your files are stored on your phone, then it is often easier to send them to someone directly from your phone. So you need your email hooked up on your phone, and then you can use the attachment paperclip option to send that to someone else. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. And I think things are changing pretty quickly in the world. We pretty commonly accept photos. Almost all of the attachments that I see now are PDFs that people have shot from their phone. So there's no reason now that you can't just be out and about and take a photo with your phone and email that in. You don't need to drive around. If you don't have the time, feel free to just send that along, or just ask. I mean, if you don't know where you're sending your document, just ask whomever you're directing that to. And one of the other things I wanted to touch on was the subject line. That is something that we see a lot. I know each of us have really, really cluttered inboxes. What are some tips to make your subject line grab attention and get you a response?
I think the best way is to use a subject and a verb. Make it really clear what's going on. And some of them can be kind of stock too, like request for quote. But that's okay. But what if it was request for quote on this? Just that little bit extra detail can make you set you apart from not just other customers or other vendors, but also from spam. If it's got something specific, it's going to be clear that this is coming from a human. You were looking for a response. You're ready to maybe hand out some money. And so they should probably be responding to you. When I do my subject lines, I usually go for probably like 5 words. I would say about 5 words. There's a subject, there's a verb, and then there's obviously often some kind of a phrase. needing input on this, not just needing input. If I can't even take the time and the courtesy to be specific about what I'm asking you to do, maybe you're not going to take the time and courtesy to respond to me, because maybe you're really, really busy and you have to triage as you're looking through your inbox to see, what do I have time to respond to in the next hour? What can wait until the end of the day? What can wait until tomorrow? I'm going to wait on the things that aren't detailed subject lines because I'm scanning through it a quick glance and I don't have enough information on that. I know that's going to take more attention and time for me to digest what's actually in the body of the email. And maybe there won't even be enough information in the body of the email. Well, then that's really setting me back time-wise. So don't make it too descriptive. Make it descriptive enough that it's easy for that person receiving the email to know what you are needing from them or what you're offering them. There's that too.
Body of the email. That is a great next piece of it.
Yeah.
I know, again, all of us are very busy, so great, they've got that catchy subject line, and you've got to convey a message in that email. What is the best way to make that a due date if it requires attention, how to draw attention to that and make sure that you get a response? What is the best way to kind of phrase your request or tell that story? I mean, should it be a narrative? What should it look like?
I think politeness is always a really good rule. I do think starting with thank you or ending with thank you is really important. And I think it's the same rule as the subject line. Give them enough detail that it's clear what's going on, but don't give them so much detail that they're going to be overwhelmed by it. And often, I think the best rule of thumb is to have a second set of eyes look at it. If it's something that's really important and it's a crucial matter and you really care about getting a response in a timely manner and you're not super familiar with doing business communication or even emails, because email is completely different from verbal communication. You might be a great verbal communicator and really struggle with email, or vice versa. I'm kind of vice versa. I'm down with written communication. I have a harder time with verbal because I talk in circles. Well, once I write it down, I can look at that and say, well, that's circular, or that's just back and forth. Now I can move this around and do it. So proofread your emails always. If you are texting for your business, proofread your texts always. Make sure, try to think of it from, try to think outside the box. Read it out loud. That is one of the best rules I ever learned when I was in college for English, was read it out loud. Because if you listen to it out loud and it doesn't make sense as you're hearing yourself say it, it will not make sense to the person who needs to receive it. So if it is that important of an email, read it out loud. Maybe get someone else, get a second look at it. And once you do that, for a few months, you'll eventually get the hang of it. You'll figure out what sounds right, what sounds awkward in an email. And yeah, don't drag it out too long, or else they might not want to respond. But don't give them such insufficient information that they feel like it's not worth their time to respond. And I think I guess depending on whether it should be a narrative or not, make it really clear if you need information. You can start with that, hey, or hi, I'm responding to this thing you asked me to do. I need a response by this date so that I can explain why. That's, I think, a good way to get a response too, is to tell them why you're asking for this for them. If you explain that I've got a deadline I got to make, or I've got superiors I got to explain this project to, we're all little kids still at heart. We want to know why. Why do we got to do that? Well, if we know why as adults, we're generally a lot more motivated to do it, even if it's going to take a lot of effort from us.
Yeah, and that really helps me personally. When I get an email that comes in from Amy saying, hey, I need this report, if she highlights that specific date in the bold, that's going to grab my attention. I'm going to put it on my calendar, and then I'm going to read through her description to see if I really need to do it. So
yeah, bolding it, that's another good way to do it. I never really use that tool. That is a really good way to do it though. And don't overuse bold and italics. I've seen plenty of business communication where this is bold, this is italicized, this is in quotation marks, this is bold and italicized. Maybe they're all in quotation marks, and it's just like you're being screamed at. And so it's really a bad habit to make of overusing those. But when used sparingly, bold is a very effective tool for, as you said, drawing attention to a deadline. That is a really good, I would recommend that. I think you can use highlighting tools in some emails too. I wouldn't do that because that just feels like you're having like a paper being graded with, a red pen or something. Bold is bold is a little kinder on the eyes, but it still is, it pops out from the rest of the text that way. just use it sparingly. Don't make that person feel like you're yelling at them, and never use all caps. Never use all caps. I still see business communication sometimes with that, and it just makes me cringe every time. Like, why are you yelling at me? I'm trying to help. It's all part of that wanting to be polite and courteous to your fellow business people.
I would love to open this up. Is there anybody who is willing to kind of speak to either a best practice they have or a pet peeve that they have? Because I know that we all have different styles of communicating, and it all has to be tailored to your type of business. But I think sharing some of those and giving a little bit of perspective about what we like to see or what we don't like to see kind of helps everybody else refine, those messages.
While people are thinking too, I wanted to add that on my business signature line for my being a library assistant, and a lot of us at the library do this, we will include below our signature a quote by someone probably famous and italicized, and you'll properly attribute it to that person. And it's kind of a nice way to make your signature more personal. Like, well, this is maybe why I do this work, is because this person maybe has inspired me, or not necessarily that person, but the thought behind this quote really drives my motivation to do the work that I'm doing. And you're welcome to do that. I think that that's fine and a fairly commonly accepted practice with business signatures, especially if you're self-employed, then you get to do whatever you want. And it's something people are familiar with seeing. Just make sure that it doesn't draw more attention than, all your business contact information does. Like, you wouldn't want to make that little quote purple and size 30 font size is bigger than your name. And I've seen that too. So it can be subtle, but it can be a kind of a personal little, this is what motivates me. And that's kind of nice. Someone is saying, I try to avoid terms like I need. You don't want to come across as needy. You could use an alternative phrase like, if you can give me this by this deadline, I can give you this. Proper motivation behind that. You can, how would you say it without saying I need? How do I usually say that? If it's not time sensitive, you can also just say, hey, when you get a chance, could you look this over? I know that deadline's coming up on this date, and it would be great to have your feedback before then so I can finish it. It would be great. That's another way to do it. But if it's time sensitive, I need might be a little more acceptable, or something along that line. Like, we've got this deadline approaching. We won't be able to make it in time. No, you don't want to say that. That sounds like just scared. You want to appear confident. Please is great. Please and thank you are great. I'm trying to think of the exception, like for when you have to ask for the same thing several times. You can just, well, I'm going to make an executive decision. There's that option too, if I don't get your input, but I would love to have your input for this. Input, I feel like that's a word I use a lot with me and my supervisors, is I could really use your input on this, because that's pretty benign. And it could mean everything from, I need you to crunch a little bit of numbers. I need you to double check what I'm doing. I need your brainstorming power. Input's pretty nice. Handy term. Anybody else
All right.
have any thoughts?
Yeah. Any other questions from our participants out there? I know
Adding
there's some more in the
credentials or
comments. Go ahead.
logos to your signatures. I think it's fine to add your credentials. Oh yeah, if you've got like a master's or something in it, and it I think you should probably include that, because I'd say that's part of your business title. If your credentials is directly related to the field you are practicing in. If you happen to have a master's of arts in tarot card reading and you are a construction worker, then don't include that. If they're totally disparate, don't do it. But if it's directly related, yeah, because that lends credibility to you as a business person. Logos, I think, are fine. Just try to shrink it down as small as you can get, with it still being recognizable as your business logo. And I would do it below all of your contact information. Don't break up your contact information. Like, don't put it between your name and your business email or anything, business phone number. Do all of your name, your business name, contact information. And I would do the logo at the bottom so that it doesn't detract from all that important information, because logo and branding is very important too. Getting that recognizability. If you have a good branded logo, yeah, I think it's important to include that. But that's not the main thing in email. The main thing is communicating and making it so people can communicate with you, and they're going to communicate with you through your phone number or your email or your business address. They can't do it through your logo. It's not direct.
Kayla, I'm gonna jump in there on logos. They do not load on every device. They typically do, but if you have a really big photo and it's really high resolution, or somebody just has a different type of a device, it's not going to show up everywhere. Usually it will, but not always. So you want that to be at the bottom, so there's not just a weird empty break in your email. And also you want that email to load quickly so that people can respond to you.
So one thing you might be able to do is, if you only have like a vector image of your logo, is to try to get it converted to a JPEG, something that you can size down more easily. That is more readily, like I think pretty much every device can load a JPEG, as long as I'm trying to think what program. I used to use a program called Windows Picture Manager, and you can actually reduce file size with that. And so it makes it that image a lot smaller and easier to load.
There's a question in the chat.
Why do some people have large photos in their email? How do we avoid that? Well, some people have large photos in their email because they probably haven't learned how to reduce the size of the photos. And how to avoid logos as attachments. You would have, so as you're creating your signature in your email account, let me look at how, I think in Outlook, you'd have to search online how to do it, because every email provider has a different track or a different path to follow in your email account to get to where you can create your signature. And then you would add that logo as part of that signature. I believe it has the same thing where there'll be a little paperclip in the create the signature box, and you can kind of attach it or copy it. And maybe you copy and paste it there. It's different in every.
Yeah, if you want to keep it in the actual signature box, at least with Outlook, you copy and paste it in where the text is, as opposed to attaching it. So you'd have it up on one window, you'd right click, hit copy, and then you'd right click paste into the box where you're building your signature block. That's just Outlook. It's unique, like Kayla said, to every provider.
Jan, could you give us a little bit more clarification on your other question? Why do some people have large photos in their email, and how do we avoid that? Can you give me an example of that? Because I'm not sure I understand, and I want to get through that question and make sure we attend to it properly. And yes, I believe this is being recorded to listen to again.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just am thinking of some of the emails I get where it looks like attachments and it's just their logos, and then the photo sometimes comes through gigantic, and it's just like it's my realtor who always looks like that, and now that I'm starting a business, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want my emails to come across with my logo as an attachment, or any image that I put in to be gigantic.
Yeah. So then what you need to do is look at the back end of your photos before you send them. You can check what their dimensions are.
Okay.
I'm trying to think a good dimension. I want to say they're small. They're like in the 200 kilobytes is like a size that's like good to send in an email. If you're up in like the hundreds of megabytes, that picture's way too big. Okay. And don't even talk about gigabytes. So you would, again, use a tool like Windows Picture Manager or something similar to that to reduce the file size on that. You can make a copy of the picture, so you can leave the original, on your computer as is, and then manipulate the copy you make to be a smaller file size when you attach it or add it into your email signature. And yeah, that's a very good point to make. You don't want it to be too big, because I have seen a number of emails. I moonlight for someone who needs me to make slideshows for her on PowerPoint pretty regularly, and she will send me these enormous pictures. And then I'm scrolling. I had to scroll to the right and left, not just up and down, to get to where the picture ends, to see if she gave me like a 7-word sentence with directions on what to do with this picture. And if I didn't know her personally and hadn't known her for over half of my life, I might not know to look for that text. And that can be really a bad thing, to miss those instructions because the picture is so big.
Yeah, and you don't want every email that you send to have an attachment, because sometimes people are looking specifically for emails with attachments.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do that. You scroll through and I'm looking for the paperclip to find, I know they sent me that one with an attachment 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah. And you can also practice as you're learning how to manipulate picture sizes and shrink them. Practice sending
Mhm.
it to yourself or to a friend who, or someone, you can check their email real quick and say, hey, did that come through? Okay. It's always good to do those trial runs before you actually send it to that important business contact.
Okay, thanks for the tip on the resizing. I'll try
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Another thing I would try to avoid doing is zip files. I don't even know if those are a thing anymore, but that can cause problems. It's hard because it's a good way to send lots of really big files from one person to another, but they sometimes, some people have troubles getting them to open and download properly. So probably nobody even does that anymore. Maybe I'm the only one who uses zip files anymore. I don't know. Is OneDrive any good? I have not actually tried using it. I don't have any input. Has Kim, have you, or Amy?
Amy uses it all the time. I use it as well. OneDrive is a cloud service. So when we talk about cloud service, we talk about storage that is accessible from anywhere. So kind of just like saving a file on your computer, if you've got something in the cloud and you have internet, you can get that document anywhere. And we use it really regularly at SoReady. We use it every day because I like to have my documents available to anyone on my team, and I want them to be able to get into them, change them, and do all of those things in real time. So yes, we use OneDrive. There are a lot of other services like that out there, like Google Drive, iCloud. All of them are cloud-based services. So Amy, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
You summed it up very, very well. What the OneDrive has allowed us to do as a team, especially since we've been working remotely for almost a year now, is it's allowed us to, it's a cloud-based service that saves all of the documents for all of us to work together and collaborate on. Since we've been separated, it allows us to save those, and we can get it from any device anywhere. If I'm working from home, working in the office, working on my laptop elsewhere, we can all get to those documents. So, but it really is a preference thing. Make sure you have security on your laptops or computer devices. But for us, OneDrive has been very helpful to our agency.
I would also add, as devil's advocate, that if you happen to live somewhere rural or with really spotty internet, you need to consider that being a factor, because if your internet goes out, like mine does at least once every couple of months, I can't get to any of those things. So for me, I wouldn't choose that just because I live too far away from the grid, and I have very limited internet provider options. And the one that I can afford it just goes on the fritz too often for me. So it's something to consider. But if you live somewhere where you I never have that problem, well, that's probably a good option for you.
Correct.
And I like using those cloud service, even if it's not an everyday thing. I find it's very convenient if you have to share a lot of documents with one or two people, because then you can actually just share a single folder, all of these things, without having to email them every single document.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing about OneDrive is that it's more for your team. It's not, it seems like it's not something that you would use with outside contacts so much. It's more for like internal communications, I would say, right? It seems like it would be, and I wouldn't really want to give like another business like access to, but you can probably share just the one folder. Like, cause I know you can through Google Drive, you can just give people like read only access to this one thing. But yeah, so really good for internal communications.
Yeah, there are different ways to use any of those, but that is a term that you'll hear really regularly, is just cloud. Everything's moving to the cloud. But personal preference.
All right, we have about 6 minutes left. We want to be very respectful for the time that you've given us this afternoon, and we said we would be done by at 2:45. However, if we are wrapped up with questions and answers, we can go ahead and finish up early, but we want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to ask questions of Kayla before we let her off. Something we did see in the chat I want to just address is that the webinar is recorded, and so you can review it again, but we will have to make sure that you can go back and get the link. So we'll make sure that Kim gets that out to everybody who requests it. Was there any other questions that we didn't get answered before we have Kim wrap us up with our reminders of our next webinars and any other things that we need?
I don't see anything else. So again, I want to
Okay.
thank Kayla. This has been a great session, very well facilitated, and a lot of great tips and things that I think will help people and hopefully save you a lot of time and headache.